Good evening and welcome to the next in our series of entrepreneurial webinars, Becoming Unstuck, How to Move Forward with Velocity. And whether you're joining us live tonight for this presentation or you're going to be watching the recording, just please be fully welcomed and acknowledged for participating in this webinar. It's so great to have you here and participating in this conversation with me. So, who am I? My name is Amber Howard. I am one of the senior consultants and training instructors with Procept and Title Shift. I am a certified business analyst, project manager, and change manager, and I've been working with corporate clients and in corporations for over 2 decades, delivering solutions in information technology and operational effectiveness. I've worked in healthcare and telecommunications, as well as the aviation industries and the finance sector, really for both not-for-profits and for-profit organizations. And today, alongside being an instructor for Procept and Title Shift, I also run my own consulting, coaching, and training and development company. One of the newest things that I've been taking on of late in life is I'm a podcaster. So I have a podcast called What Would Amber Do, which is available on all major platforms. So that we can get a little bit more related and you get to know me a little bit. I'm also a mom. I have 3 incredible kids. I was originally born in New Zealand, but Canada has been home for most of my life. And so that's a little bit about me. For those of you that haven't met me before or don't know me, before we move on to the content of tonight's workshop, I just want to make an acknowledgement. This is something I've started doing recently in my trainings. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that I get to do what I do today because I'm a giant standing on top of the shoulders of other giants. So this presentation that you see tonight, the training and development that I do would not be what it is without the contribution of philosophers that I've studied throughout my life, along with other coaches and mentors and people that have contributed to me in various different ways. And I think it's just important for those of us that create content, for those of us that are out there supporting people creating what they want in life, to really take a moment and acknowledge everyone and all of the thought leaders that came before. So, all right. So what are we here for this evening? Well, my commitment, you could be doing anything tonight. It's 8 o'clock for those of you that are joining me live. Welcome. If you could put in the chat, you can use the question box to communicate with me. So if you could put in the question box, who are you and where are you joining from and what are you hoping to get out of participating in this webinar this evening? And my commitment for your being here and the time that you spend, whether you're here live or you're watching the recording of this webinar, is that you walk away from your time with me, one, with a technique for reframing any circumstance in life. Now, that may not mean much to you right now, but I promise you by the time we're done today, it will. You're also going to have the opportunity to identify an area or areas of your life which might not be working as well as you'd like them to. I'm going to introduce you to the Becoming Unstuck framework that I've created, which is a simple 5-step process so that you can really get unstuck in any area of your life. And you're going to learn how to apply this framework to your life so that you can discover new paths to move forward. And as well, we're going to bring some awareness to what does it look like to be a leader in your own life? What does it look like to be a leader in your own life? That's one of my big commitments for human beings, and part of what it is that I do day in and day out is I am a leader who causes other people to be leaders in their own life. So what does that look like? And we're going to actually end our time today talking about that. So our time is going to be spent, first we're going to have a conversation about context. And then you're going to have an opportunity, and again, whether you're here live, I invite you to kind of go along with me. This is a bit of an interactive webinar, even though we're not necessarily talking to each other, and you can communicate with me in the question box. I invite you, or whether you're watching this live after the fact, I invite you to kind of follow this exercise along and use this webinar as an opportunity to do some looking and inquire into your own life as I go through and I create the content for you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to inquire into is, are you actually stuck? What does it mean to be stuck? I'm going to show you the Becoming Unstuck framework, and then we're going to go through that framework step by step. First, by assessing. If you do in fact determine that there is an area of your life, and I promise you, if you're a human being, chances are there's at least one area of your life that things are not going the way exactly as you would like them to be. Now, it may not be that they're bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just they're not quite as good as they could be. There's always an opportunity to grow. So we're going to assess, like, I'm stuck, now what? Like, what do I do with that? And then we're going to look at designing, like, where do I want to be in my life? And then you're going to have an opportunity to analyze, well, where am I now? And you'll discover in this conversation with me why it's so important to not just design a future that you want to live into or goals for the future, but it's also really important to understand where are you at in your life right now. Because we're going to use that to identify, which is the fourth step of the framework, what are my gaps? What's the gap between where I am today and the future that I'm looking to fulfill in my life? And then we're going to talk about planning, right? So how do you build a new map to get you? For those of you that remember, that kind of choose your own adventure, how do you build a new map for the next adventure that you're taking on in your life? And then we'll wrap up a next step. So we'll talk about some next steps, and I'll share with you some of the trainings that have already been done that are kind of part of this series that you might want to go back and take a look at. So I have an invitation. And my invitation is this. While you're with me for the next however long, 50 minutes of this conversation, that you come to this conversation willing to try on new things. Put aside whatever voice that you have in your head. Maybe you think you've heard this before, or you think you know some of this, but be willing to be here to discover something newly. Because I promise you that even if you're familiar with some of the content that I'm going to talk about today, even if you're familiar with some of the content that I'm presenting today, as I know some of you who are alive with me are, that the you that you are in this moment has actually never had this conversation. And if you operate in life like that, always open and willing to discover something newly, then that's a very powerful access to being able to move forward with velocity in the areas of life that are important to you. So context is decisive. What does that even mean? Every single one of us, every human being, has a way in which they view the world. We talk a lot about this thing that we call reality, but if you really look at your experience as lived as a human being, reality is nothing more than your personal perception of the things that are happening in your experience of life. And every single human being has their own perception, their own context, their own map or view of life. To give you an example of this, think about a car accident that happens, and if there were 4 different people standing on different corners of the intersection in which the car accident happens, every single one of those people who viewed that accident would come to some varyingly different conclusion about who was to blame, what happened, the sequence of events, because they're viewing that circumstance of the car accident from their own map of the world. And we're going to talk about this more as the evening goes on. So I told you that one of the things that you are going to get out of being here this evening, was a powerful technique with which to deal with any circumstance in life. And that technique is called reframing. So I first really learned the language around reframing from the training and development I got in personal resilience. So if reality, our experience, the experiences that we have of the circumstances in our life is nothing more than our own personal view of the events that we're experiencing, then we have an opportunity to actually create a new view of the circumstances of our life. And you can look for yourself right now at your own experience. Has there been a time where perhaps you experienced a tragedy, or you had some circumstance that was unwanted, yet you were able to, sometimes we talk about it like seeing the silver lining, or you were able to, perhaps not at the time that you were going through that circumstance, but in hindsight, looking back at it, you were able to view the circumstance in a much different way. The same automatic response that we have as human beings to have a view of the circumstances of our life means that we also have the opportunity at any moment to choose to view them differently. And when I say that context is decisive, what I mean by saying that is that the view you have of the circumstances, the context in which you view the circumstances you are dealing with in life, will shape your actions and how you respond. And we're going to learn more about that as we go through the evening. So I would love for those of you that are with me live to put in the chat, why are you here tonight? What had you choose to accept the invitation on this Tuesday evening when you could be doing anything, to be here and participate in this conversation? Is there an area of your life that you know you're stuck in? Are you experiencing not being able to move forward in certain areas of your life? And for those of you that are watching this webinar after the fact, my invitation is for you to do be in that inquiry for yourself. So I said the first thing that we were going to do is determine, are you in fact stuck? Right? How would I know if I was stuck? What would be my measurement? How would I determine? Well, I invite you to consider that how you know that you're stuck in an area of your life, or perhaps multiple areas of your life, is based on the experience that you have of your life. Do you leap out of bed in the morning? Are you excited by the abundance of opportunities that surround you? Or do you find yourself more often than not low in energy? Making promises to yourself and maybe to other people, but not fulfilling on them. We're going to have a conversation a little bit later about procrastination. But are you procrastinating about the things that you say are important to you? So the answer to the question of am I stuck is based on your own personal experience of your life. And it's in terms of the results, the tangible outcomes that you want to be experiencing and creating, whether that's in the area of your finances, your health and well-being, your career, your business, romantic relationships, whatever it is. But are you achieving the things that you say you want are important to you is part of it. But the other equally important, and in my opinion, if not more important element of it is, are you enjoying the experience of achieving the results that you want to achieve in life? I believe that we are creators, that we are co-creators with whatever you believe is sourceful in our life. So we're not just creating the results. We also have the opportunity to create the experience. And in fact, this is our life. Life doesn't work out someday, one day when we achieve the things that we say we want. Every day that you go after achieving the things that you say are important to you, you're actually living your life. So it could be that you're stuck in some of the personal relationships that you have in your life. Perhaps you don't have the experience of connectedness with your social network or the people that are important to you. Remember, there's no right answer to this question. This is an individual response based on what matters to you and what you care about. Now, part of what I do for a living is have people inquire into things about their life. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite things. So as much as I titled this webinar, Becoming Unstuck, I invite you to look, is the frame, is the view that you're stuck, in fact, an empowering one? Perhaps in and of itself, before we even get into the content of this conversation, you could start to see something newly about the way in which you hold the circumstances that you're dealing with. That there's, in fact, an opportunity to create something new when it comes to your experience of life. I just noticed in one of the comments in the chat, we are definitely going to talk about procrastination a little bit later this evening. So thank you so much for raising that, because I think it's something that, it's just kind of part of the condition of what it is to be a human being, is that we deal with procrastination. So I'm asserting that if your experience of life is not one in which in every area of your life that you say matters to you, and again, remember that's going to be an individual answer, that in fact there is some place in life or multiple places in life where you have the experience of being stuck. So why did I create the Being Unstuck framework, Becoming Unstuck framework? What's at the source of why I created this? I have worked with many clients, both as a consultant and a coach throughout my career. And one of the things that I've noticed about the condition of what it is to be a human being is at some point in time, we are going to stop taking action inside of the commitments that we have and the things that we say matter to us. And in fact, more often than not, our experience of the living of our life is that we stop and start ongoingly. And not only do we stop and start, we make stopping wrong. So I created this framework as an access and a simple way for people to be able to, and we're going to kind of go through it formally right now, but you could just kind of like have this in your back pocket as you're going through your day-to-day experience, and use this framework as a simple tool to be able to, at any moment of the day, regardless of what you're dealing with, find a way to move forward and get back to what it is that you're committed to with velocity. Because one of the purposes that I exist for is that human beings get to fulfill on the things that are important to them. That they get to live a created life of their own design. And they get to know themselves and have the experience of themselves as being a leader in their own lives. Inside of that commitment, the Becoming Unstuck framework is a tool to help people do just that. So, step one in the framework. I'm stuck, now what? Right, Amber? I'm stuck. Okay, I got it. I'm stuck. You've convinced me, which I'm not to convince anyone, but I'm stuck. Now what do I do with that? Well, the first step in the framework is to assess and actually get to the source of where are you stuck? And this requires a willingness to really do an authentic examination of your own life. And it takes courage sometimes, because sometimes when we look at our lives, things aren't the way that we want them to be. Perhaps we don't have the sense of connectedness that we want. The amount of money in our bank account isn't where we want it to be. We don't have the sense of stability. Maybe we're stuck in a job that's not fulfilling. Maybe we don't have a job. Maybe we're not working. But sometimes when we look at our life, we don't like what we see. So you can use the wellness wheel here. And there's lots of different wellness wheels. If you don't like this one, you could probably go Google a couple of others and find one that works better for you. I like this 8 dimensions. I think it's a helpful way. There are some that have up to 12, but I feel like the 8 dimensions of wellness that are talked about in this wellness wheel allow people to have kind of a holistic picture of their whole life. So you want to, and for those of you that are with me right now, and for those watching after the fact, you want to go through these different areas, right? In the area of your intellectual wellness. Are you stimulated? Are you learning? Are you continuing to grow and develop yourself and your mental abilities? Physically, do you have the level of health and well-being, physical health and well-being that's important to you, that matters to you? Now, I'm going to say this now and I'll probably repeat it later. Each of us, we're unique as human beings. So there's no one answer for what does it look like to be satisfied in each of these areas of life. That is a conversation that you get to have with yourself. So what would have me be satisfied in the area of my physical health and well-being will likely be very different than a professional athlete. And perhaps what would have me be satisfied in my social well-being may be higher or different than someone else. So when it comes to your social well-being, do you have the level of connectedness and belonging? What is that? How are your relationships with your people doing, whether they're in your personal life, your family, your friends, those closest to you, or maybe you volunteer in organizations, wherever you be a social creature in the world. How satisfied are you? And you can actually do an assessment on a scale of 1 to 10, right? 1 to 4 being like, okay, there's lots of room for improvement here. 5 to 7, it's okay. Could be better, but it's not bad. And then kind of anything's, 8 and above would be pretty extraordinary. I have a pretty high level of satisfaction in this area of my life. When it comes to your occupational well-being, right? The career, how you earn a living, your ability to connect, create in life in the ways that are meaningful for you. How satisfied are you in this area? Your financial well-being, whatever that looks like for you. Not everyone has to want to be a millionaire, but what's important to you? How much income do you want to be earning? What kind of investments, if you want to have investments? How financially secure are you? Do you have the abundance that you're looking for to be able to contribute money back to other people? In the area of your environmental well-being, the space that you live in, what you're surrounded by, the energy that you spend your days inside of. Does it work for you? Do you enjoy the environments, whether they be at your workplace, right? So many of us are working from home these days, but when you're back in the office, is your workplace an environment that you feel good being in? Your spiritual well-being. Now, this doesn't have to mean that you're part of a religion. Spirituality is much more expansive than that, and it might mean, but are you satisfied in your spiritual well-being? Do you have practices of, for me, a big part of how I fill my cup up in this way is being in nature, listening to music. Do you like to meditate? Do you practice yoga? Do you attend church? Do you spend time in prayer and devotion? How satisfied are you in the area of your spiritual well-being? And then finally, your emotional well-being. Do you have the experience of yourself that you're able to regulate your own emotional experience of life? And we're going to talk about the important part that emotions play in our dealing with day-to-day life a little bit further in the webinar. A big part of looking at whether you're stuck or not could be maybe you have identified goals and you're not moving forward with those goals. So it could be that in one of these specific areas of well-being, you've identified things that you know that you want in this area, and for whatever reason, you're not moving forward with those. So whether you've actually been kind of going through this assessment with me as I've been talking about it right now, or you do it after the fact, I invite you to take the time, like gift yourself the time of actually having a real look at your life and answering the question, in each of these areas of life, how satisfied am I? So the next step in our journey together is looking at design. So where do I want to be? And you'll notice I've highlighted, I've bolded in capital letters the word want. So this is not where do I think I should be, what do other people think I should be, what do people think I should be doing, what do my children think, what does my spouse think, what does my boss think, what is all of the, what do my parents think? Where do you want to be in life? What do you want to be creating? This is actually an invitation to fantasize and dream again, because some of you watching this webinar may have stopped doing that. Sometimes in life, we kind of kill off the imagination in children. So we grow up to become adults who've forgotten how to dream. And if I were to give you a completely blank canvas, if I was to give you a completely blank canvas with an unlimited supply of paint, with every color imaginable, what would you create on that canvas? And it's important in this part of the conversation to be willing to set aside the how. Because those of you listening to this conversation right now might find yourself being, well, I can't have a completely blank canvas. I already have this life, I have this job, I have these kids, I can't have a completely blank canvas. Remember earlier I said I'm inviting you to try on the things that I'm saying this evening, not like it's some truth, but possibly an access to seeing something new. My experience in the work that I've done with human beings is that we will sell out on our own authentic desire in order to be accepted and belong. Well, what if you didn't have to do that? What if it was possible? And I have experienced this in my own life, and I've seen this in lives of many of the people that I, journey through life with and that I've met. And you probably know people from your own life who seem to be able to just keep creating and designing their own life based on their authentic desire and what it is that they want. This exercise of designing where you want to be in life is going to require you to not only give up the how, it's going to require you to examine the very beliefs by which you view life. Do you have conversations with yourself about what's appropriate or not? Do you have a belief that asking for what you want is selfish? Do you believe that you should put the needs of other people, your kids, your loved ones, your coworkers, in front of your own? Are you free? Do you give yourself permission to design a life that you want? Do you believe that you're worthy of having all of the things that you want in life? Perhaps you've experienced loss. Do you have a belief about moving on and creating something new? Do your beliefs empower you, or do they limit you? See, I gave you a blank canvas with access to all of the colors that are available with limitless paint. Did you start taking some of those colors away? Did you start saying, well, I don't have the money for that? I don't see how to have that, so I'm not even going to express that I desire it. I heard recently someone say that of all of the successful people in the world, and I don't mean success based on one definition, but for anyone who achieved great levels of success based on their own personal beliefs around what success looks like for them, they may not agree on everything, but the one thing that they have all expressed and they all do agree on is that creation starts in your own thinking. Creation starts in your own thinking. And if you actually look at life, everything in life, the car you drive, the cell phone you talk on, the internet, the halo light, a pen, jewelry, it was created twice. It was first created in someone's thinking, and then it was created in the physical world. So the invitation in the design section is to actually look at, where do I want to be? And consider that if you have the experience of being stuck in life, then there is already something that exists in your heart, in your mind, about where you would like to be. Because if there weren't, then you wouldn't feel stuck where you are. So next, we want to analyze. Okay, well, Amber, here's the future that I've created. I live in Costa Rica. I don't know, I travel the world. I have a juicy, delicious, romantic relationship with the love of my life. I have a great job where I get to work with amazing coworkers. I've got an abundance of money, whatever it is. I have great health and physical well-being. My family's thriving. My kids are doing well. I have the best relationships with people. Whatever it is, whatever that future you saw for yourself. I'm asserting that it's important to know where you are right now. In the consulting work I do with my clients, I would call this understanding your current state. You could also language it like, what's the what so of my existence today in the present? So we've created a vision for the future. But next we want to understand where we are today. Well, why does that matter? Why do I even need to know where I am today? I've created this vision. Can't I just focus all of my energy there? It matters to understand where you are in the current moment so that you can identify the gap between where you are today and where it is that you want to get to in the future. Because it's in being able to identify the gaps that you're then going to be able to create solutions to close those gaps so that you can move forward. So whatever your goals are, whatever you want, again, it's going to take a little courage. And it's also going to take a willingness to look objectively and without any invalidation of yourself. So if you want to cause a transformation in your finances, well, how much money is in your bank account right now? How much money do you have coming in? How much money is going out? Are you earning enough to cover your base needs? If you're wanting to transform your environment, well, what does it look like today? Is it cluttered? Do you have a lot of things to get rid of? What's the current state of your relationships? Do you have a lot of things in between, things that are incomplete? Past upsets in the relationships with the people that are important to you? Now, this part of the exercise could bring up shame. Shame, according to the definition by Brené Brown, which I really embrace and love, is the belief that there is something about us that if it were known by others would mean that we are unworthy of connection and belonging. Human beings are hardwired to connect and belong. Hardwired to connect and belong. Shame has us not open the bills when they come in. And I'll be honest, that was me at one point in my life, much earlier in my career as a single mom. I would just not open the bills. Because whatever was in that envelope, I wasn't sure I knew how to pay it. So it's better to just not open it and not look, right? Now, in hindsight, looking back at that behavior was crazy. But shame has us not look at our bank account. Shame has us not call our debtors and create an agreement that will work. Shame has us not reach out to other people and ask for support and help with the things that are important to us. Shame has us not be willing to pick up the phone and call our loved ones and say, I don't know how our relationship got to the point it is today, and I don't know how to make it better, but I'm committed and I believe it's possible. Are you willing to work with me? So by analyzing where we are now, we have a foundation from which to look at the next stage of the framework, which is to identify what are my gaps. Right? So whether it's in the area of resources, perhaps it's capital, you're starting a business. Maybe it's support. You have young kids, you're a single parent, you need support taking care of your children so you can work and increase your income. Maybe you have gaps in your energy. You're spiritual, you're finding yourself ongoingly, spiritually, emotionally, physically, or mentally drained. Maybe there's a gap in the amount of energy you have to be able to deal with life. There could be gaps in terms of your skills. right? There's this future that you want to fulfill on. There's this future that you want to fulfill on, and here you are today, and you're missing tools or skills or knowledge about how to create the desired state. Maybe it occurs to you that you don't have the time to be able to dedicate to the future that you want to build. When you do this exercise of looking at the gaps between where you are, and perhaps you don't even know what the gaps are. So perhaps you need to work with someone else. Maybe you need a coach. Perhaps you need to ask a friend for support. The key in this exercise is to not make the gap wrong and to not get trapped in the how. So we don't want to make the gap wrong. We're human beings, we're living beings, we're always going to be growing and expanding. We're either actually moving forward or we're moving backwards. But the key is to not make the gap wrong. And I'll never forget hearing a speech by Matthew McConaughey at the Oscars, where he said that he's always chasing a guy 5 years in the future, and it was himself. So you're answering the question in this exercise, what do I need to get from where I am now to where I want to be in the future? And remember, in order to accomplish that, you may need support because you may not see all of the gaps. You may not even know how to create the future that you want. You just know that you want it. Now, before we move on to the final step in the framework, I want to have a conversation with you that is somewhat related to this conversation about future state, current state. And we're going to actually have this conversation in a couple of different ways because I think it's really powerful. So you may have heard, we're human beings, but we don't spend a lot of time inquiring into talking about what does it mean to be. We spend most of our time talking about the actions that we take and the things that we have. And in fact, many people believe that if they have all of the right things, people, cars, houses, money, that will actually give us happiness or whatever positive emotion. And that it's actually a lack of those tangible physical things that we have and own that causes a lack of satisfaction and happiness. Well, I invite you to consider that it's in fact the opposite. That as human beings, we are always being something. And the being, who we're being, is directly correlated to the actions that we take and the results that we get. If I'm being courageous, I'm going to go ask that person out on a date, or I'm going to ask my boss for a raise. But if I'm being cowardly, I'm not going to take that action. I'm being fearful. If I'm being worthy, then I'll set healthy boundaries with the people in my life. But if I'm being shameful, I won't. There's a direct relationship between being, doing, and having. And what gets more interesting is that relationship is also replicated in how we view the human mind. So our conscious mind is our thinking mind. We're going to talk more about that in a second because I have another way for you to view this and look at this. So beingness is sometimes generated by our subconscious mind by default based on the past, or we can consciously create new ways of being in our conscious mind using our thoughts. So thoughts in our conscious mind cause emotions in our subconscious mind, right? There's a relationship between our conscious and our subconscious mind. And it's actually our subconscious mind that is directly controlling our bodies and the actions that we take. So if you want to take new actions, then create new ways of being and new thinking in your conscious mind. An image so that human beings, create an image so that human beings would be able to visualize the mind. So we have sense perceptors, right? Smell, taste, touch, hearing. Those sense perceptors cause us to have thoughts in our intellectual mind, our thinking mind. Your thoughts cause feelings in your emotional mind, also called your subconscious mind. And it's the emotional mind, the subconscious, that's actually causing the actions that we take and the results that we get. The more we choose thoughts that are aligned with what it is that we want, the more we get, as I like to say, in the driver's seat of our own mind, the more control we will have over our emotional mind and our results and our actions in our body. I also like to point out, and it's interesting to note, that children before the age of 7 do not have a conscious mind. And it's actually in the conscious mind where we're able to accept and reject things. So much, and we're going to talk in a moment about your map of the world, how you view reality. So much of what you view, your beliefs, what you think is possible or not, how you view life, was actually formed in the first 7 years of your life before you were even able to accept or reject anything. So the last step in the Becoming Unstuck framework is plan. So we're building your map, we're building your plan. What do I need to acquire? What do I need to think? What do I need to believe in order to close the gap? What solutions? Now, consider that you might, in fact, need a bigger map. What if you can't get to the future that you desire from the view of life that you have today? And it's not a problem. You just have the type of view, perception, belief about reality, about your life that you needed to get you to where you are today. In order to get you to where you want to go in the future, you need to create something new. So first, you've got to believe it's possible, right? You have to be willing. And perhaps this will require you to suspend any sense of disbelief that you have. And first, you need to be willing to believe that it's possible to have what it is that you want. Because this is the truth. From my experience, and you could try it on, not like the truth, like the only truth, but a place to stand. That you will never outperform your beliefs. You You will never outperform your beliefs. So if you don't, in fact, believe it's possible to create the future that you desire, you're not going to create it. So also critical is deciding. It's critical you decide that you're going all in on the future that you say you want. See, on the other side of decision, on the other side of choice, the solutions are abundant and effortless. The resources that you need will show up, the support, the mentors, the guidance, all of those things are on the other side of choice. And again, you could be in life like I believe, that that's another thing that you could choose to believe, not like a truth. Sometimes part of the work I do for my contract, for my clients, is as a project manager. And many times I will be in meetings and there'll be like a concern expressed about whether some product is going to get in, or the things that we need for the work that we're going to do is going to come in time. And my response is always, I only talk about and think about what it is that I want. I'm not willing to entertain that the things, we'll talk about risks and we'll talk about how can we escalate or what can we do to ensure the outcome that we want. But I don't entertain that things are not going to go the way I want them to. Because why would I do that? Why would I entertain not having the things that I say are important and matter to me? Why would you entertain that you're not going to have what it is that you want in life? So before we talk about procrastination for a minute, that's the framework. So you can have this be an exercise where you go through those things. When it comes to defining the solutions, I'm going to go back for a quick second. When it comes to defining the solutions, they may kind of come to you, or you could get into conversation. You can use techniques, and we're going to talk about some of the other offerings, some of the other free webinars that are available to you on this subject, because there's a whole conversation we have around the building blocks for success and how you can actually move forward with a goal once you're clear about what it is that you want. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that now, but I just want you to get that first you have to actually decide that you're all in, that you don't know how it's going to happen, but and you're putting a stake in the ground that you're going to actually be able to create whatever it is that you want in life. Now, procrastination. You may be familiar with this cycle, either because you've seen it somewhere in the past, or because you've experienced it in your own life, right? We procrastinate, then we feel guilty, and then depending on what's happening, we may panic and get stressed and anxious. And then if we don't fulfill on the things that we said we would, then we make excuses, and then guess what? We procrastinate all over again. This is a never-ending cycle of shame. I assert that most human beings, if not all, have experienced this at some point in time. Now, maybe procrastination is not a problem for you, but I offer you a new way of framing procrastination. What if procrastination was in fact a signal that you're not ready to move forward? Now remember, what I just said is not the truth, but a possible way of viewing procrastination that may in fact be more empowering than, I suck, I'm a horrible human being, I just got my word, all of the rest of the things that we say to ourselves when we procrastinate. So if procrastination is a signal that I'm not ready, I have two options. The first option is I could look and see if I'm willing to create. Like, could I create the willingness to be ready? Am I willing to put aside all of my concerns, my thoughts, my whatever? Am I willing to create being ready? Or maybe what's missing. The second way, the second option is what's missing that would have you be ready to move forward. Framing procrastination in this way, allows us to get out of this trap. Now, for those of you that have attended trainings with me before, this may be familiar to you. I like to end these conversations with a kind of a conversation about what are some of the things that are important when it comes to being a leader in your own life. So first, it's important that you are clear about what matters to you. What are your core values? What are you committed to? What's important? Accountability. Someone very wise once said accountability is our insurance against failure. The nature of promises, of declarations, is that they disappear. Conversations disappear. They're not like physical objects in the world. So do you have the accountability, a coach, friends, buddies, alarms that go off on your phone to let you know when important things are happening? Do you have sufficient accountability to achieve the things that you say are important to you? Do you have a reputation to yourself and to others of being someone who operates with integrity when it comes to your word? Do you know yourself as someone who keeps your commitments to self and others? When it comes to being a leader in our life, it's also important to have whatever level of organization and time management that is necessary for the size of the game that we're living in life. So if you're playing really big games, you probably need more organization and time management. And perhaps we even need some support with that. One of the things that we talk about in one of the other trainings, the building blocks for success. How do you schedule to have your whole life work? Being a leader in life also means being adaptable. I choose to believe that everything in life is unfolding for my greatest good. And there are sometimes in the moments of life that things don't go quite the way that I want them to, or I think I want them to go. So how adaptable am I? COVID was a great lesson in our ability as leaders, entrepreneurs, human beings to be able to pivot. Because what's certain is that there will be circumstances in life. What's certain is uncertainty. So being a leader in your life is being someone who's able to adapt to the changing circumstances of our lives. We're come to the end of our time together tonight. My invitation to you is before you kind of step away, take a few moments and declare for yourself, what's the next action I'm going to take? What's the next action that I'm going to take to create what I want in my life, to create that future that I see? And maybe you haven't created the future yet. So maybe that's one of the actions that you're going to take. You're going to do the assessment. You're going to get in communication. You're going to share. Maybe that's the action that you're going to take. Now, I promised you that I would, share some of the other offerings. There's so many. If you go on our YouTube, it's Procept's YouTube. There's so many different free trainings and videos and amazing webinars by all of the different instructors who work at Procept and Title Shift. Two of the ones that are specifically kind of part of this series, right, are Aligned, Goals Worthy of Your Life, and the Building Blocks for Success. They're both available on the Procept YouTube. Anyone who knows me personally is watching this, you can always reach out to me and I can share those resources with you. So we're kind of at the top of the hour, and I promised that we would complete by 9, but I'd be happy to take any questions and stick around for a little bit for those of you that are here live to answer any questions that you might have. For those of you that are watching the webinar, after the fact, you can get a hold of me at ahoward@amberhowardinc.com, ahoward@amberhowardinc.com. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them there, okay? So because I promised that we would take an hour, some of you may want to leave. If you want to stay, I'm happy to answer some questions. But if you do need to go, thank you. I really love what I get to do. I love being an instructor. I love sharing my knowledge and the things that I've learned throughout my life with other people. And I really couldn't do that if you didn't participate and show up and be here for these conversations. So just really, really from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. For those of you that joined me live for this conversation, I hope you got value out of being here. And for those of you that are watching the webinar, just thank you for giving your time to be part of this conversation.